Hello, welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting, tactics, firearms, ammunition, use of force, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Today, we're going to be talking about what I think are some of the best buys for firearms in 2023. What are some of the best makes and models that perhaps you should think about, consider if they belong in your household, in your battery, in your use of force continuum? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. I'm going to put in a bio. I might throw in a retro version just for fun, and then we'll get into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor. An urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years. Also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Enough about me, guys. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Let's get into today's topic. Okay, so maybe you've been looking around at our society. Maybe you've been thinking that things might go downhill. Or maybe you're just waking up to the fact that, hey, defense of myself and those around me, and loving my neighbor as myself, including protecting them, is something I should be doing. Maybe I need to up my defensive firearm game. Or maybe you're looking at inflation thinking perhaps blued steel is a better long-term investment than paper money. Or maybe you're just looking for a new gun. I don't know. But I thought it would be a good idea to put forth what I think are some of the best guns to get if you're looking at getting guns in 2023. The first one I'm going to mention, if you don't have a good combat shotgun, even if you have one, if you don't have a good pump shotgun, because they have their advantages, there's only really one I can recommend. For a long time it was kind of debated between a couple and then down to the Mossberg versus the Remington. But with Remington and all its company woes and quality control issues, I really can only recommend the Mossberg 500 family, which includes it includes several, but the one I'm going to talk about today, the Mossberg 590, kind of has arisen as the de facto military and police quality fighting pump shotgun. It brings a lot to the table at any price point, but it's not that expensive. The specific model I'm going to mention is the Mossberg 590S. If you're not familiar with the 590S, The S designates that you can shoot short shells. And unlike a lot of guns that you can kind of finagle to shoot short shells and then you can only shoot short shells, the Mossberg 590S, you can load, let's say, a 3-inch Magnum and then a standard 2 3/4 and then a couple of short shells and then maybe a full-size shell behind it for whatever reason. I have, by God's grace, 2 go-to shotguns, a Benelli M2 and a Mossberg 590S Van Kamp. The Mossberg 590S, I think that I have been vacillating for a while between the two, but I think the 590S has become the one long gun I would grab. Carte blanche, no other caveats, for some kind of peanut butter and chocolate hitting the fan scenario. And mostly because of that short shell capacity. One of the, let's say, less than desirable traits of the 12-gauge shotgun is how much ammo weighs. And while those short shells are not quite as light and handy as, let's say, 22 long rifle, they are quite a bit lighter and handier, both in weight savings and space savings if you're trying to pack things in a bag, if you're trying to get down to a man-portable system. The ability to shoot those short shells, I think, is a great thing. Those short shells come in slugs, they come in buckshot and birdshot. I believe 00 and number 4 is my favorite. Aguila makes them, Federal makes them. And I think if I'm packing some small game loads, those mini shells with the birdshot are plenty. If I'm shooting a dove, do I really care how many pellets are in the shell? There's going to be more than enough in a short shell versus a standard shell to take care of a dove or a quail or a jackrabbit to feed my dog, because those things can be quite nasty. Anybody that's ever skinned a jackrabbit and found botfly larvae, bleh, bleh, gross. They are unclean. But anyway, the ability to carry those short shells. I'd still want standard length shells for my go-to truck gun load, defensive load. I'd still want full power slugs, but some of those short shells gives me the ability to carry quite a bit more ammo. I don't know how long they'll be making the Mossberg 590S, and they make several versions of it. The one that I'm talking about specifically on their website is model 51602. And it's the 590S that comes with the M-Lock forend. I'm not about putting a whole bunch of space age stuff on a good shotgun, but it is nice to put a white light on there. And the ability to just mount a small piece of rail and mount a light is a good thing on a go-to shotgun. So this version has the M-Lock on there, and it has really good, I think, combat patrol-worthy iron sights. Not just like that vestigial bead, which is okay if it's just for home defense, but come on, we can do better than just a bead. This shotgun comes with really good, I think, combat effective iron sights. It comes with all that, and it's a good value. I don't like mentioning price with today's numbers and inflation, but MSRP on their website, which you could probably get cheaper, far less than half a Cougarand. A really good value. And I don't know how long they'll be making the 590S in this configuration. Now, the 590 is probably not going anywhere, but I don't know how long they'll be making this model. So if you're looking for a good fighting pump shotgun, you might look here. Quick aside, if you do not care about the short shell option for whatever reason, and you want something a little bit more classic, you just want a good solid pump defensive shotgun, and you like a little bit more of the, and you have a little bit more retro taste. You want the, blued steel or parkerized steel and wood. You might look at the retro versions of the 590. They're a really good version as well. Quick aside, if you want that Mossberg 590S, it comes with really good rear sights. XS also makes a really good rear sight that you can replace it with that has a decent sized rail if you want to mount a red dot sight on that shotgun. It's what I have on my go-to shotgun, so I feel like I should mention that. But Just like a red dot can be a force multiplier on a carbine or a handgun, it certainly can be that on a shotgun as well. And if you have a quick detach system, as I do on mine, a burst fast fire, battery dies, you break it, whatever, you literally just turn a knob and throw it away. And I still have my good go-to ghost ring iron sights. Anyway, that's the Mossberg 590S. A really good model, and again, the specific model I was talking about is the 51602. And if it wasn't cool enough already, I should mention you can mount a bayonet on it. So, one I'm going to mention you may be familiar with if you're familiar with Forgotten Weapons or In Range TV. I do like both those channels. I have no affiliation with them. They are very big, I think, in the online gun tuber community. And again, I have no affiliation with them, but just from what God has blessed me and allowed me to get through in life and do, and all the experiences, competition, combat, law enforcement, private contracting, just from what I know and what I look for in a good fighting rifle / carbine, they made a version of it, I think, that checks those boxes for a go-to fighting rifle and does it very well. So, if you're not familiar with it, they came up with the What Would Stoner Do carbine. And this was quite a while in the making. Kind of their idea was, and I don't want to speak for them, but as I understand it, go back and verify this for yourself with their channels, but if Stoner were around today with all the more modern materials and optics and things that we have, what would he do? Hence the name What Would Stoner Do carbine. And they came up with a lightweight kind of go-to rifle. And they're big in competitions like two-gun, which I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, you know, competition shooting is not tactical. It'll get you killed in the streets. That's not me. I've done both. And I'll tell you which part's not relevant, the being really accurate part or the being really fast in shooting part. They're both relevant. Some things don't 100% cross over, but it absolutely is a good training ground to make you a good shooter. And I'd say anybody that says otherwise, ask them if they've ever actually put in the time to not just go and compete, but win competitions. Because I've yet to meet anybody that's really, really tried and put work in and actually won competitions that says, oh, they have no bearing on actually real-world gun handling. Again, it doesn't all cross over, but many of the things do. Again, being really accurate, being really fast, being efficient, all those things cross over. And those are the big things. Anyway, this What Would Stoner Do carbine. Pretty awesome. If you're not familiar, a big part of it is their one-piece polymer lower. And I don't mean lower receiver, just the lower receiver part. I mean like the grip, the stock, all that stuff is one kind of monolithic piece of polymer, kind of like a Glock frame would be. That allows it to be quite a bit light and handy. It uses a pencil barrel, which I'm a big fan of. If you're not doing full auto, if you're not dumping mags, things like that, I think the pencil barrel is fine. And it saves weight. I'd rather have a light, handy, well-pointing rifle that was accurate first, second, third round on each target than a big, heavy monstrosity that I can do mag dumps with, because that's not super practical, either in competition or combat. Again, there's some more crossover. Here's the big thing that really sets this apart from a lot of other guns. 5 pounds. Weight. 5 pounds. And it does that with a 16-inch barrel. 5 pounds. Just looking up the standard M4 carbine, which should have a 14.5-inch barrel, it lists on Navy.gov 6.43 pounds. 6.43 pounds. Again, the What Would Stoner Do carbine, 5 pounds. And honestly, unless you just want to have the exact same thing, or as close to what the military uses as you can, why would you go with that when you could go with this? That government profile barrel, yeah, that's cool if you're going to mount an M203 grenade launcher, and those are cool. I'm going to be honest. I like the M79 Thumper a bit better. But if you're not going to do that, why wouldn't you go with a lighter, handier rifle with a 16-inch barrel? Free-floated, unlike the M4 carbine, meaning there's less to interfere with the barrel and the point of aim, point of impact if you're putting stress on the forend, which you might laying on a barricade or on a sandbag or against a tree or on the window of your truck, whatever the case might be. There's a lot of advantages to this carbine over the M4. It weighs less. And it comes in at around 0.75 Cougarand. It's a good deal. If that's still a little bit more, they make another version called the Civil Defense Carbine, which I think is really cool as well. It's even a cool name. I wish we'd bring back the Civil Defense Force. I don't want to drag this out between the difference between both those carbines, but really cool, and I don't know how long they'll be made. Again, kind of a collaborative effort between, I believe, Forgotten Weapons in Range and Brownells. Really cool. And again, in 2023, they're still available, and I don't know for how long they'll be available. Maybe they'll be made for the foreseeable future. Maybe not. But if you're looking for a good go-to fighting carbine that's lightweight and handy, the What Would Stoner Do carbine is pretty cool. The next one I'm going to talk about may surprise you because you'll know I'm not a big Glock fan. But many people are. Many people want that Glock system. They want that Glock magazine compatibility. They want the aftermarket support. By the time, in my opinion, you get a Glock and you get it to be a decent gunfighting gun, you're going to spend quite a bit in upgrades. You could do that, especially if you're a competent gunsmith and you want to take a Dremel tool to your Glock frame to make it semi-ergonomic. You certainly can do that, and if you want to go that route, no worries. You also could go with an upgraded one out of the box. Shadow Systems makes one, and again, I have no affiliation with Shadow Systems or Warrior Poet Society other than I like their videos and I like some of their content. I don't know how much we would agree theologically, but I believe that from what I've seen, we both follow Jesus Christ. So, being brothers in that sense. Anyway, I have no idea that he even knows that these podcasts exist. However, he has his own kind of version in collaboration with Shadow Systems of the Warrior Poet Society. If you don't know, that's kind of his channel. Handgun. And it's based on a Gen 3 Glock, kind of done and upgraded in several different ways. There's a couple of different versions. You know, I'm a big fan of carrying a full-size handgun day-to-day, concealed carry. They're more shootable. I don't really care as much about the capacity. I care that they're easier to run, easier to shoot, easier to get fast, accurate hits on target, easy to perform the clearing of malfunctions. For many reasons, I'm a big fan of full-size fighting handguns. There's a full-size version, which, looking at it, indicates that it's based on a Glock 17. I would assume a Gen 3 Glock 17 since the patent is likely expired. But if you're looking for kind of an upgraded version of a Glock, it looks like it's got a lot of good upgrades. It looks like it has better ergonomics than the Gen 3 Glocks. One, they got rid of what I think are just atrocious finger grooves that are on the Gen 3. It looks like it has an undercut trigger guard, which is nice. A flared mag well, which if you're big on getting quick reloads, that's a good thing. Threaded barrel, I could take that or leave it. One little tip, what I like to do generally is a decent size O-ring. I back that thread protector off, put a decent size O-ring on there, and put the thread protector back on, which gives me kind of a good muzzle protector. As I've known to be hard on stuff, and the crown of your barrel is kind of important for accuracy and consistency in shooting. So that's a little tip. Put a rubber O-ring on there and put the thread protector back on. That gives you quite a bit more overlap to protect the crown and the rifling in that pistol barrel. But it comes with a threaded barrel if you want to run a small compensator or put a suppressor on it. It has what looks like very aggressive serrations on the slide, depending on whether you like to do your manipulations from the rear or from the front, and the ability to mount an optic, and good backup iron sights. That's a big deal, because the Gen 3 Glocks, if you get them, you're going to have to get them cut or get the optics ready version of them. Anyway, it's got a lot of features that if you bought a Glock and upgraded it would end up costing you quite a bit of time and money, I think. But you can get one done. I mentioned the full size. They also have the compact, which I assume is built on the 19, and the subcompact, which I assume is built on the Gen 3 Glock 26. But it looks like there's a lot of good practical, not just, again, kind of space age junk thrown on there to make it look cool on Instagram, but actual practical, usable upgrades for a Glock. It has an upgraded trigger. I'll be honest, I don't know how good it is. I've never handled one of these actual pistols. I have handled the shadow systems, and I was less than impressed. Is it better than a Glock trigger? Yeah, but that's kind of like saying a Burger King burger is better than a McDonald's burger. I mean, they're both kind of fast food. I mean, neither one is prime rib. I don't know if it has that same shadow system trigger in it. Maybe it has a better trigger. But either way, it's going to have a better trigger than a Glock. If you're looking for a good Glock trigger, just an aside, you may look at the Timmy trigger for a Glock. And in 2023, it looks like at the time of this recording, those handguns are still being made and available. And who knows if they'll continue, if they'll switch to something else. But if you're looking for a handgun that keeps a lot of the advantages of the Glock, but has a lot of upgrades, you may look to that handgun. The next firearm I'm going to recommend for 2023 is a little different than the other ones on the list, in that it is a fire control unit, and that's what Sig Sauer refers to it as. I'm going to recommend the 320 F.C.U. fire control unit. If you're the kind of person that wants to DIY his own gun, but doesn't want to have to worry about hand-fitting parts, filing, polishing, things like you would have to do with a 1911, but you kind of want it your way, or you want one fire control unit and let's say you want to try running an optic, you're not sure if you're going to like it, or you want to practice stippling and making your own textures, but if you mess it up, you don't want to ruin the entire frame of the gun like on a Glock and cost hundreds of dollars to replace it. The 320 fire control unit kind of lets you do that. If you're not familiar with the 320 system, it's marketed as kind of the chassis system. The fire control unit comes out. Now, it's not super easy as they may have you believe, but it's fairly simple to get out of the firearm. You pop out the fire control unit, what you might consider the frame or the polymer lowers. You can buy different ones, different colors, different companies make them besides SIG. So you can get that fire control unit. Maybe you want to go with a Wilson Combat grip module. Maybe you want to go with an optics ready slide. Maybe you want to go with a fancy Gucci gold barrel. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat. There are a ton of options. The 320 has come on strong in the market in the past several years. It had a little bit of a shaky start, a little bit of safety concerns, I think legitimate concerns. One of the reasons I've advised for a long time on this show to stay away from a new make and model the first 3 years that it comes out. If it has issues, let somebody else figure that out. Don't be a beta tester in a gunfight. That said, the 320s have been out for a while. You can get the fire control units. You can get them with or without a safety. You can make anything from a subcompact carry gun to a, what I would consider a full-size, kind of 5-inch barrelish. A lot of people would consider that a long slide. I would consider it a full-size because that's the size of a 1911. To a really good full-size fighting handgun. There's a lot of different options, both from SIG and aftermarket. So if you kind of want to build your own gun in 2023, or you think you may want to build one in the future, you may want to grab one of those fire control units. Also, there are the different systems that allow you to drop those into chassis to make kind of a PCC. Now, you got to be careful now with the laws on the whole pistol brace thing that's going on, but that's also something cool that you have been able to do in days of yore with the fire control units. Kind of wish I had bought another one a while ago. I'm not really in the market right now trying to be a good steward of the Patreon money, but if you're looking for a good kind of investment and or you want to build your own gun in 2023, maybe look at the SIG 320 fire control unit. Maybe you've got a little bit of money set aside and you're the kind of person that maybe wants to build a gun piece by piece. Like every month or every 2 months you have a couple of $100 set aside for the next part, whether that be the slide or the barrel or the optic. And you kind of want to build it out so that at the end of 2023 you have the gun that you want. Anyway, that 320 F.C.U is a pretty cool idea. The next and final gun make and model I'm going to talk about today may seem like it's coming out of left field, but I think it's a really cool gun, a really cool concept, very practical if you have the situations where this kind of thing may shine. Also, I don't know how long they'll be available. They may decide not to make this model anymore. Anyway, if you're familiar with kind of competition shooting 22s, you may be familiar with Tactical Solutions. If not, you may not be. But Tactical Solutions make some really good, high quality 22 upgrades. They also make complete guns. One of the guns they make is the Tac-Sol Owyhee. Owyhee is a mountain range in Idaho, and a very beautiful one that I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for. But that really doesn't make this a good gun model. Some of the things that you may like about the 1022, it's really well known and proven platform, that Ruger 1022. It comes in the takedown, and they did a really good job on the takedown variant of it. So why go with the Tac-Sol? Because they make the Owyhee, which is loosely based on the 1022. Well, number one is weight. You can kind of think of this maybe as the W.W.S.D carbine of the 22 world. 3.9 pounds. How's that for weight? All the Tac-Sol barrels I've ever seen are just phenomenal in quality. So there's that. It has that backpacker stock, I believe, made by Magpul. It lets you hold the barrel in the stock, lets it fold to a nice handy package. It takes, I believe, common 1022 magazines, which there's a lot of factory and aftermarket options available. Oh, and did I mention it's a bolt action? Yeah, it's a bolt action. Now, you may decide you want to go with a semi-auto version, and they make semi-auto versions. And the Tac-Sol semi-auto versions are great. And they're likely to make those for a while. I don't know if they'll continue to make the Owyhee. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Why? Why would you step back to a bolt action in a 22? Well, maybe you want to be quiet. Real quiet. Clandestine. Maybe it's legal to hunt small game where you are. You just don't want to be a pain in the butt to your neighbors. Maybe you want to take out groundhogs or whatever in a suburban environment where it's legal. Maybe you're not in city limits. There's nothing prohibiting you. Nothing malum prohibitum in the law that says you can't. You just don't want to annoy your neighbors, and you don't want to go through all the hassle of getting a can suppressor. You could load Colibris, CB caps, 22 shorts. It should feed those. Since you are manually operating the action, you should have a quiet option. Also, the working of an action can be kind of loud, especially once you've gone to the 22 shorts or CB caps. The bolt action eliminates that. You can run it super slow, super quiet. You don't get that slamming of the action. Also, again, I mentioned suburbia, just taking out varmints. A couple of other applications. Maybe you're out on a big game expedition. And same thing, you want to be quiet. Maybe you're getting ready to hunt the next ridge for elk or mule deer, and you see some grouse, and you don't want to spook everything out of where you're hunting. Maybe you want to do some small game hunting without scaring away all the big game. Totally legally, totally legit. This would be a great option. Also, if the 22 was going to be your kind of one go-to survival gun, I don't know whether I would choose this over a semi-auto, because in a defensive situation, I might really want that semi-auto capability. But I think I would consider it. I would give it some serious thought. It's not my go-to, long gun for peanut butter and chocolate hitting the fan. But if it were, I might give it some thought. There are some advantages to that bolt action, being quiet. Especially if you're talking about you live in an urban, suburban environment, and that may likely be where you are when peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan. Being able to be quiet in those environments. Maybe taking small game without giving away your position. Maybe just moving around and being able to shoot without being really loud. Also, if you have a round that fails to go off, you can work the bolt again. Those failures to ignite are not uncommon in the 22 long rifle ammunition world. And bolt actions can be worked pretty fast, and you got to imagine how much travel there is in a normal, let's say, hunting bolt action rifle versus how small the travel and movement is in a 22. Think about how the length of a 22 long rifle cartridge. So anyway, I think it's a really cool model. I think it's worth considering if it meets something you're looking to fill in your firearms battery. That Tac-Sol Owyhee. A really cool option, a really cool idea. I'm glad that they make it. And it's not, but if a 22 rifle was kind of my go-to long gun for if things got really bad, I would really consider this one. I don't know that it would be the one, but I would certainly look at it. Before we get to the tactical tip of the day, if you consider buying any of these firearms or even a box of ammo this month, for a fraction of the cost of most boxes of ammo, you can become a patron. Mostly I want you to do it because you want to support the podcast and you value the content. But also, patrons do get some cool insider stuff. If they want to be, they can be part of the insider chat. And we talk about all kinds of stuff all the time. This morning we were talking about knives and go-to folding knives. Some of us veterans were talking about stuff that we still had from our time in service. It's just a good hangout for fellowship. And I also put out some insider content on Patreon for just patrons. That's all I'm going to say. There should be a link in the show notes. Since in the latter part of this episode we mentioned 1022 magazines, if you have ever thought, hey, I've shot this thing a lot, it might be a good idea to disassemble and clean this 1022 magazine. I'm talking the rotary factory 10-round magazines. You probably have only thought that the first time you tried it. Not the best of ideas. So that might be your tactical tip right there. If you're thinking about disassembling and cleaning a 1022 rotary magazine, don't. But if you want to clean it without disassembling it, a couple of things you can do. Number one, just some automotive electronics cleaner. You might spray that really vigorously inside there and turn it upside down and shake it. Maybe repeat. Then spray it with some aerosol rem oil or something like it. If you don't have that, you may consider soaking it in something like Simple Green for a while and then hitting it with some canned air and then maybe a little bit of aerosol lubricant. If you don't have any of that, maybe some hot soapy water. And again, some canned air and something to get it lubricated. And the same can be said for many magazines that are really hard to disassemble. Make sure you are not using anything that's going to hurt the finish on the magazine. But Glock magazines are notoriously kind of a pain in the butt in the handgun world to fully disassemble. So you can use any of those tips for those as well. With that, tactical verse of the day. From the mouth of Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah himself. If anyone desires to be great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You see, a real leader is there to serve. A servant leader is a good leader. Jesus shows us this. He doesn't have followers to take advantage of them. He lays down his life for them. He washes their feet. Did you ever think about the passage where it says Jesus washed the feet of his disciples? He got down and washed their feet. The creator of the universe, God made man, washed the feet of his disciples, of sinners, of men who would deny him. Even, it says the disciples, so I assume that includes Judas, the man who was about to betray him, his feet too. He is our example. Now, the Marines aren't perfect. Jesus is perfect. But one thing I learned, servant leadership, if you're a good leader in the Marine Corps, it didn't mean taking advantage of your men. It often meant doing more, staying up later, making sure things were done, making sure they were taken care of, even when it was more difficult on you, giving even when it hurt. One of the things I hope they still teach is if there's not enough food to go around, the lower ranking people eat first. If you're in charge, you may not eat if there's not enough food. Again, I read, "Whoever desires to be great among you, let him be your servant, and whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many." That's our example. That's my God and your God, who loved us so much. He humbled himself to the point of death, and death on a cross, to serve you and to serve me. How could you not love a God and a Savior and Redeemer like that? With that, men, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.